Okay, welcome to Into the Channel podcast, primarily about women's football. Before we hit the pitch, if you enjoy the show or love women's football as much as your boys do, come kick it with us already. Subscribe, follow YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to watch or listen. Leave us a review over at your favorite podcast app. Links to all of our socials in the show notes of this episode. I am your host, Dino de Cespedes, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel. What is up, man?
I'm feeling slightly less than fantastic, buddy. Not because of the football. Let's just say I caught the bug, but thanks to the miracles of modern science, not really miracles, like actual like researchers and scientists and doctors and things like that, the symptoms aren't too terrible. I don't feel that great though, so I gotta apologize. I won't be cracking a beer ski with you today. By all means, I feel like you should partake. I'm in much more of an organic cold pressed juice kind of mode. But I will say, this citrus cayenne juice, the ingredients are as follows: 3 whole oranges, a sliver of ginger, a dash or 2 of cayenne, hopefully this one has 2 dashes, about 1 lemon, and 1 or so grapefruit. So we're still living over here. We're surviving.
I like it. That's quite the diverse mix of ingredients there.
Trying to stay healthy, man.
Yeah. Use promo code channel. Buy one of those juices.
We're working on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well wishes to you, man. I'm going to go ahead and
do it. Enjoy yourself.
Crack this quarterfinals preview bad boy, just in honor of our guy who was drinking juice over there in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay. Oh, it sounds great.
Well, cheers to you.
Cheers to you as well. I should be good by Saturday.
Cheers to the Olympics as well. Let's go. It's going to be quite a weekend. So a lot of good football today. Pretty good football today, I'll say. And the only reason I say that is because there was a lot of maneuvering and understanding of what the dynamics were with the table and who was getting where and who was going home and who was staying. And I think we saw that play out in the field a little bit, but still really, really exciting stuff. A lot of good drama. And we've got our seeding. We know our 4 quarterfinals matchups. Let's go. We even got some times. We're going to knock through all of those. A lot to cover tonight. With that said, where do you want to get started?
Let's start in chronological order, as we like to do a lot of times in these tournaments. First match on the docket Saturday, a little early for your boy over here on Seattle, but these are already multiple complaints I've levied. So let me try to slow down on that. 6 o'clock Eastern. I have an early wake up on Saturday out here in the Pacific Northwest. A little more tenable for you folks over there on the East Coast, 9 a.m. The United States of America versus Japan.
A matchup that we kind of landed on. You know, we did a little bit of prognosticating before the tournament kicked off, filled out some brackets, created some tiers, made some predictions. And I think USA-Japan, with USA winning Group B, Japan coming in second, Group C kind of was always in the cards.
Yeah.
But what kind of state do you see both of these teams coming into this matchup in?
I mean, I feel like both teams should feel really good about themselves at the moment. I mean, Japan coming off a pretty dominant 3-1 victory over Nigeria. They score another banger off a free kick. They're able to kind of take that 3-1 lead, take that control heading into halftime and just kind of see the game out from there. They had 46% of the ball versus Nigeria. They got off 21 shots, 7 of those on target. I think all 7 might have been in the first half, or maybe in the first half they had like 4 shots and 3 of them were goals or something like that to my recollection. And then on the USA side, they put in another really good performance. They had 70% of the ball versus Australia and 21 shot attempts with 9 on target. So both teams should be coming in pretty full of confidence at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we can already sort of imagine a 70-30 possession split. That's roughly where these teams have been for most of this tournament. And I think it's going to be an interesting mix of styles as well, because it kind of feels like both of these teams want to counter. USA will hold the ball, but when they're on defense, it kind of feels like they are going to play a little bit conservative, not take too many risks, not sort of crowd or rush the ball, just kind of like let the game play out, giving us an opportunity to run and not necessarily just kick it over the top and run onto it, but like open field, be creative, find a lane. That approach paying big dividends, I think, so far in this tournament. And also maybe a little bit of a bellwether with regard to how Emma Hayes might be thinking about like a Spain matchup down the road.
Yeah, I like that point. And I actually was thinking something pretty similar during the Japan-Nigeria match. You know, Japan, they were trying to play some passes, some aerial passes into the box, into the channels, some might say. I jotted down in my notes, on the other side of what you were saying about Emma Hayes, maybe Japan is already kind of thinking about how are we going to play against USA on the counter in these kind of opportunities. So both of these teams, exactly to your point, they're able to open up the passing lanes into some dangerous areas, and they do that with speed and precision, good ball movement and player movement. So I think you're right when you say this is definitely trending toward a 70-30 game in terms of possession in favor of the USA. Let me flip the question to you. Can Japan survive with only 30% possession versus the USA?
I actually think this game comes down to the back lines, and we'll start with Japan specifically. So obviously if USA is controlling the ball, we saw this with Australia a little bit today in today's match. Julie Foudy was talking about it early on the telecast with regard to like how frustrating it could be to kind of play against and ultimately like break through a low block. And when the USA scores right at the end of the first half, you kind of saw like a weirdly overdone outpouring of emotion just for the first goal. Roughly, like, the game doesn't totally even really matter. Like, it's like USA's winning the group either way. They're not going to lose this one to Australia. But I think that was reflective of like just how difficult it was to break through and actually get that goal.
Yeah.
You can make the case that that'll be a little bit tougher against Japan, perhaps. I think they're a little bit more organized defensively. But then I think on the flip side, I think Japan's counter is going to give the U.S. midfield problems. So I think Japan is easily going to be able to move the ball forward, get these breakaways, right? And then it's going to come down to how's Germa going to hold up? Who's back there with her? Is Davidson back? Is it Sonnet? Dunn, Kruger? Like, what are the pieces going to be looking like? Because in spots, there's going to be some nervy moments when Japan's running. They look like their legs are moving twice as fast as our runners, as they've been known to do. And it's just going to be a matter of like what each of those backlines on both of the sides look like, really.
Totally agree, man. And I think we have to address the big old elephant in the room. So Sam Coffey picks up a yellow card in the third minute of this match against the Tillies, and she will be out against Japan due to yellow card accumulation. So now you are missing a key cog in your defense with her as a holding midfielder. And I realized the Davidson injury, you were right on this in the last episode where you said, okay, now you lose Davidson, you put Sonnet there. It's great to have Sonnet there, but now you've thinned out some of that depth. Well, now you're without Coffey. And so now we see, is Davidson able to come back and play? I have not seen any reporting that says she can or cannot yet. So that'll be a very interesting question to see answered. Let's say she can't. What does the back four look like, and who is your stalwart defensive holding midfielder in that situation?
That's really tricky. Kind of feels like you have to put Sonnet in that defensive midfielder spot, right?
You would think.
She's got the mobility to kind of cover most of the ground on the pitch, right? So that might be the move there. I'm not sure where Neiswanger is going to be at necessarily, but I think you got to think it's Germa, Fox, Dunn, Kruger. If Davidson can't play, like we're starting to get to the very end of the bench here. I know Emily Sams, I think, was called up, and might have dressed. So that could be something that you go to, having an excellent season, obviously here in Orlando. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. You're a resident formation tactical guy. What do you think they look like?
I think traditional wisdom, because Crystal Dunn typically she'll play left back. That's like kind of her bread and butter there. So if you say, okay, Sonnet is too good of a center back and she pairs really well with Germa, then you play Dunn, Sonnet, Germa, Fox, left to right in the back four. And then maybe in that defensive holding midfielder spot, maybe you look at Lindsay Horan and say, hey, look, Rose is going to have to take more of the responsibility connecting the offense up top. And I need you back there. I need you as the veteran. So I think that's a possibility, but I think you raise a good point too, because Sonnet is a really good holding midfielder. We can ask a lot of Crystal Dunn, but what if we do what you're suggesting? What if you play Kruger at left back and you just look at Crystal Dunn and say, you're one of the greatest players in the history of our program. Can you give us some time at left center back? Can you pair with Naomi and we go Kruger, Dunn, Germa, Fox? These are four awesome players. These are four experienced players. Might be a little risky, and I know some folks in the YouTube comments have made fun of some of the lineups I put together because I like to move the pieces. So you have to really think about these things, and without Davidson, it could present a challenge. But if Davidson's back, then it's Dunn, Davidson, Germa, Fox, and you put Sonnet at defensive midfield, and I think you're feeling great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and was excited to see Corey Bethune get like some legitimate minutes today in this one
Sure.
because I think they're gonna they're gonna need her
They might.
with all the flux, on the roster. And I said it, when the rosters were announced, the Lily Johanna situation. You sort of look at where we're at right now. We're only halfway through this tournament. We already knew it was going to be, a battle of attrition.
Yep.
Just the quick turnarounds, the short rosters, but would be really great to have a player like in that spot that you just sit rock solid, and can kind of, slot in the pieces around a centerpiece type player like that.
Yep.
But we do have Corey Bethune. I think Corey Bethune's going to get some minutes. I think she's kind of maybe borderline in the starter conversation, especially if Davidson's out and Coffey's out. Because I think at that point you'd have to, especially if Horan drops, I think you got to play Corey Bethune.
I would hope so.
That seems to be one way to balance out the skills and talent, get everybody sort of spaced out the right way.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I was taking notes on it today. I just think Corbin Albert, she scores a good goal today. Great hit. Upper 90. I just think the last few matches, the send-off matches, I don't even think she made an appearance in the Germany match, but in the first match against Australia, Albert's touches in the USA's defensive third have not been consistent enough. I don't think they've been reliable enough. Mm-hmm. I think that's why she didn't play versus Germany, or if she did, she played very little. I think it's why you can see her time kind of shrinking a little bit. So I would be surprised if you kind of put her in a defensive role. And like I said, she scores that good goal. We know she can do that. We know that's in her game. It's the consistency of the touches that you actually need. And if that's the part that you're lacking, like we have all the scoring already. So we actually don't need that part. But if you're going to give us inconsistent touches in the midfield, you might sink us against Japan.
That's a great point. Corbin Albert's strengths, I think, are, for the most part, I think centered around like head down. I'm just going to go. That might mean running. That might mean firing from where she's at.
Yep.
And I think when the game gets a little more complex, a little tighter, it requires a little bit more thought. She could do that too, but not at the same level as some of the vets or some of, the killers on some of the other teams that play that more European style. But I actually think Albert is for sure a valuable piece. She'll definitely have a role to play because she's a little bit of a matchup nightmare. Especially when she comes in for Horan or even for like a Lavelle, she's big and she's strong and she's fast.
Right.
And she's got power. She's not out there being Bon Mati, but the stuff that she does, she's doing that stuff at a high level. And I think there's a reason that we're looking at leaner slivers of her game and being like, I'm not sure. That's something that we can work on. But, for the most part, good player.
Yeah.
And I think we'll hear more from her this tournament for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think I like the way you're framing that. There are spots where they could use her. I think in the spots of need right now, not so sure she's the right player there. And that's why I like you talking about Bethune, because I think she might be the one that you have to put in there.
Yeah, and I think we haven't done our brackets yet. Neither our normal brackets or our wacky brackets. We'll get to those at some point. But I can imagine against a Canada or against a France, Corbin Albert really being pretty valuable. Because I think physically she's up to the task. Japan, Spain, where it's a little bit more touch here, touch there, a little faster twitch. I think that those are going to be less Corbin Albert-y type games.
Yeah.
But again, she's still a young player, so she could definitely surprise. She surprised today with pretty much a banger.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, great job.
All right, I'm not going to ask for a prediction. We're going to save that for the bracket portion of the show. I've got some other fun stuff later in the show, so definitely stick around. Let's scoot ahead. Couple teams that I think, hold a special place in our heart for different reasons. Spain taking on Colombia in that 11 a.m. Eastern slot, 8 a.m. Pacific, a little friendlier to you. And I'm sure you'll be totally wired from the U.S. match. So
obviously,
Spain, Colombia, quite a banger. We're going to have to do something with this extra time because pretty much every match today is spilled into the next.
Yeah. But
Spain, Colombia, what are you going to be looking forward to?
I think with Spain, people can look at them in a few different ways. Like, they did enough to beat Nigeria and Brazil. Mm-hmm. Obviously, against Brazil, I know they're helped out by the Marta red card, but Spain looked under pretty much total control at all times. So I just want to say this to our pals in Spain. Our friend MLS in the YouTube comments, you understand where we're coming from now. I think we have a good understanding of each other. I just want to say to the other Spain pals out there who follow us on Twitter, watch the show, we appreciate you guys rocking with us. I just want to say this. Your national team is the best national team. I am not under any false impressions here. I recognize that. I'm not debating it. You won the World Cup over the team I support. I left that match realizing it would have taken a pretty magical effort to beat you. I think what happens when you guys are on top is that people like me and Dino and maybe a CO2 Filey perhaps, maybe we kind of look and say, oh, what are the ways that somebody could take down the giant? So just to put this on the record, we know you guys are the best, and you got to talk that talk. So please continue shit-talking us about how you're the best. But every time we say that, hey, there might be something here, we don't mean it as an affront to you as a footballing nation. So, please keep that in mind.
So I'm going to get into why I think Colombia takes down the champ. No, I'm just kidding.
There we go.
No, I think I was actually thinking about this today. I think there's a little bit of sometimes conflating Spain and Barcelona.
Sure.
Because Spain didn't do in the World Cup what Barcelona did in the Champions League, right, which is just outclass everybody outside of, little Chelsea here and Benfica, Braun, there's some interesting football having been played. But for the most part, it was an outclassing every tie that they went out and participated in. Now, Spain at the World Cup looked great, but they didn't necessarily look like the only team that could win the World Cup the way that Barcelona looked like the only team that could win the Champions League for most of it, right? So I think there's a little bit of conflating going on where it's like, well, isn't this like big bad Spain? It's like, well, it's not Barcelona, even though it has a lot of those players. There is still some learning curve. These players kind of coming together, so they're not out here winning 6, 7, 8-0, but they are dominating, to your point, but they also don't look unbeatable. I think we have to kind of keep in mind that, like, even in that first half where Spain had control, Brazil had some chances, some looks, didn't really make Gatagoy sweat too much. Yep. But like, this is just a one and done kind of tournament right now. We're in the knockout stage. So you have a bad 7-8 minutes and it could really kind of put you behind the 8 ball. So I still think Spain deserves to be upper echelon, one of the favorites for sure. But I think this match is going to be interesting. And I think we did see Mayra Ramirez give some of these Spanish players a little bit of a hard time. She'll be back for this matchup. And I think Cata Usman should be on track as well. So that could definitely change things. I also think watching Colombia today didn't quite take their foot off the gas, but they weren't throwing the kitchen sink at this game. Right. Like, I think they knew we've essentially clinched. If we hold it here, I think they would have had to give it up another 2 goals to kind of put themselves into jeopardy. Yeah. And we've seen what's happened with some of these yellow cards, some red cards, some injuries. So I think there was a little bit of playing out the string, not exactly, but I mean, that wasn't necessarily the all hands on deck, backs against the wall types of Colombia performance that we've been used to.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's one of those things. I think you nailed it. It's one of those things. They were clearly out there. They played to win the game, but it was like, okay, if we basically hold serve here, we know we're through. I believe it is Colombia's first time making the knockout stage of the Olympics. Obviously, they made the knockout stage of the World Cup in 2023. So that's a great achievement in itself. I want to ask you a question here, though. So, because I'm glad you brought up Mayra Ramirez and the trouble that she was able to cause Barcelona in the first tie of that Champions League semifinal. I started to think about that myself, and I wondered, can Colombia do the thing to Spain that Chelsea did to Barcelona? But then I also thought Colombia in their midfield doesn't really have an Aaron Cuthbert. They don't really have a Shoka Nuskin. And they definitely don't have a back four of Niamh Charles, Kadisha Buchanan, Jess Carter, and Ashley Lawrence. I guess mostly because they're not Canadian. But I started to think about this. What do you say to the idea that every time we want to try to point out how a team can beat Barcelona or Spain, not to conflate the two, we kind of always have to go back to this same example of Chelsea getting a 1-0 victory over Barcelona. And that maybe in some of these other situations, it is nearly impossible to beat a team that has Bonmati, Berayuelo, Putellas, Patri, Katakoy, and others.
Totally fair point. I mean, extremely fair point. So I think the only thing you can kind of hang your hat on is this Spain side is not scoring.
That's true.
At the pace where they're just going to lap everybody. Yeah. Right. They're not hanging 3, 4, 5 goals. They're not doing that. Like, they're dominating in a different way. So maybe it's a little bit of fool's gold. You look up at the scoreboard, you're like, all right, it's 1-0 or it's 2-0 or 2-1. We can. But in reality, it might just be a wrap. Like, they're already ready for everything that you think you're going to do, everything that you haven't even thought about doing. They're already ready for that as well. Yep. I think there's only one way to find out. It's going to be an interesting matchup. Very funny point that we keep going back to that matchup. We're like, well, Colombia's got Mayra Ramirez, and we saw what happened the last time she faced a team with Beaumonti and Paredes and some of these other players.
Yeah,
it's going to take a lot. No spoilers. We're going to save it for the bracket section, but I'll leave it at that. It's going to take a lot for Las Cafeteras to get past the world champs.
That's fair. It takes a lot for anybody.
100%. What do you say we switch gears to the 1 p.m. affair? Germany finished second in Group B. Canada second in Group A. Congratulations to those two squads. A couple teams maybe heading in some different directions. Canada, I think, really peaking. Germany, sort of waxing and waning. What are you going to be looking for when these two teams lock up on Saturday?
Exactly how we drew it up. Germany gets through. Big win versus Australia. Smacked by USA. Big win versus Zambia. Canada win all 3 matches. 3 points. Everybody saw this coming. Totally normal. Nothing to see here, everybody. I think this is going to be a really, really interesting one. I think the teams are going to come out and be super careful. I think there's going to be kind of a feeling out phase. I think Germany's going to be really wary of Ashley Lawrence and the way she's going to be running at them. What I'm very interested in seeing, I think specifically, how is Germany going to do battle with Jessie Fleming in the midfield? And what kind of role does Alex Pop have in that, if she's going to be in that midfield? And is this a Fleming versus Pop game? And whoever creates the most, I think that might be what decides the game.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, I talked about this a little bit with the USA-Japan match too. I think the backlines are going to be huge also.
Yeah.
I think Canada has the defenders to make it a long day for Germany.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they can't score, because I think those players are good in tighter spaces. But we saw the U.S.'s defense be able to frustrate those front 3 for Germany. We had sort of put the call out. It's like, all right, well, Germany's going to need these attacking players to kind of get cooking. And I think they got the ball rolling, no pun intended, today on that.
Yep.
But Canada's just they're a tough team. They're a tough matchup. They score tough goals when needed. It's weird to kind of say this, not a very scientific-y kind of explanation, but I think Canada is just going to be a little grittier, a little more physical, and they're going to have what it takes to kind of grind down that German side. If Germany is able to kind of like scoot away, find space, and kind of find a little joy, be able to run around the park a little bit, that's going to be huge for them. If it's going to be everything is in contest, elbows and shins and hips and little chunks of grass flying up, every few minutes, that kind of matchup, I think greatly favors Canada. Haven't really made my pick yet, but I think this one is going to be, one of the more intriguing matchups on the board.
Totally agree. And I will tell you, to your point, well, I think you're 100% correct on this. Think of the set piece battle that we're going to have between these two teams. Like both sides, Canada's set piece attack versus Germany's set piece defense and vice versa. There could be a lot of elbows thrown in this one, I got to think. And shout out to our shadow executive producer who coined the term tall girl bias. A lot of tall girl energy and tall girl players, frankly, in this match. So I think, it might be easy to say that like set pieces, they could play a huge role in this one. It's like saying the offensive line is going to play a huge role in an NFL game. But I also think on this one, you do have elite set piece takers and elite set piece finishers.
100%. And great matchup between two goalkeepers here. Ann Katzenberger, Kaylin Sheridan. I really love defensively what this Canada team is doing. They've only given up 2 goals in the 3 matches. A lot of things that Miriam talked about on the show, Miriam Karabi from She Scores Bangers, came to pass in a way that like the midfield's been important. Their athleticism has worn teams down. They've only given up the 2 goals, as mentioned. The one that really stuck out to me was she talked about Canada's experience in this tournament.
Yeah.
At this timing, at this speed, this time of year. And, I could be a big man about this. I kind of wasn't buying it in the moment. I feel okay saying that. I was like, okay, yeah, all right, they played this tournament. A couple of them, ran around 4 years ago or this time of year. So what? But
I mean, that's a bit much, but okay.
It shows what I know. She was dead on. I think we've seen that play out. And then imagine Dronegate,
right?
6 points. Bev Priestman, who we talked about on that Canada preview extensively, and her impact and kind of like her persona, sort of informing how that team kind of operates. Gone. And still, this team 3 up, 3 down, 5 goals for, 2 against. When you needed it, you're facing a Colombia side that is at risk, coming into the day, and they get a big win to kind of like slam the door, be like, yeah, no, this quarterfinal is not happening without us.
I love it. And I think that had to play a role. I see what you're saying about like, okay, yeah, experience matters for something, but maybe it's not an X factor. I guess when you have a massive scandal, I almost wonder if now it kind of disproportionately helps that everybody's kind of like able to pack it in. And now the players actually have something they can really talk about. Like if they have no pedigree and then they go through this scandal, what are they talking about in the locker room? Like, right. They have nothing really to lean on. Now they have this automatic, hey, let's all look at our photos of our last gold medal. That was us. We did that on the field. Folks on WOSO Twitter, understandably, non-Canada folks, have been wanting the players to stop acting like they're a victim in all of this. While I simultaneously empathize with them a little bit, where if some of those players like didn't look at drone footage, they might think, I didn't know. What do you want me to do about it? So like, I kind of am a little victimized by this. Like our coaches screwed us over. So sometimes I don't love the phrase, I see both sides, especially in certain things. This is one of the very non-serious topics where I think it's okay to see both sides of.
Yeah, I totally agree with seeing both sides, because it's a totally moot point, because whether or not a player watched the film, that film got watched by somebody who then turned that film into some ideas
exactly
to be executed on the field. So it is cheating.
Yeah.
The players were victims because none of them were orchestrating any of that. Whether they kind of heard anything or had an inkling, who it's totally moot. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The cool part about all this is that FIFA very swiftly said 6-point deduction. And the good part about that is it left the door open for this Canada side. And how cool is that? It's like, all right, well, we're going to dock you 6 points. If you can win all 3, we'll kind of like let you live, right? And then they went out and did it. And to your point, these are veteran players. They've got players in their late 20s, mid-20s, like the good chunk of that team's in their prime, right?
Yeah.
So not super surprised that a team of vets, the defending champions in this tournament, I'm surprised that they won all 3, but they got it done.
It is very much like a video game scenario where it's like, all right, well, you can save America, but only if you grab this glass vase out of this tower. And it's like, well, that's a really random thing that I got to do. Like, Jesus. And in this case, it's like, well, we docked you 6, so good luck with that. It's amazing to see him go through. I get why some people are frustrated. If you're Colombia or if you're one of the sides, I know like Australia, they were like loosely in it to make it. I could see some frustration there, but it's hard to argue that Canada didn't do enough to win and then earn their spot in the knockout round. I think that's pretty inarguable.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I think Australia probably has a bone to pick. Colombia less so, because they got to settle it on the field. If Colombia really, really wanted that 2 seed,
right?
They could have pushed a little harder, try to get a score, or kept a clean sheet.
Yep.
But that defender struck again, Vanessa Gilles.
Awesome.
Big play, Vanessa. That's what we've been calling her since day one. Check the tapes. No, not really. But I think some of the things that we did talk about last week, her tenacity, her determination, just kind of like her short memory when it comes to like, okay, I got beat here, and like now it's like, I'm going to get this right back. Or maybe she didn't even think about that. She's just like, I need maximum impact every play. She just plays like that.
100%.
The ball comes in, smashes down the header. One of those moments where it's like, who else is it going to be? Like, it was just such a storybook kind of thing. It's like, okay, of course Canada's going to find a way to win this one. Didn't quite have it on my bingo card, though. Of course, it's going to be Vanessa Gilles to score.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty awesome moment to see kind of like the journey that she's been on this football season particularly. And still, I mean, who knows? There's still a lot of story left to be written.
I look forward to her going back to Lyon and looking at Kariratu Diani and being like, okay, you leave the goal scoring to me. I got that. I am now goal scoring machine, Vanessa Gilles. Let's do this.
I mean, her and Renard, I mean, like, those are some hardcore defenders that you gotta worry about in the box there. But yeah, I think she'll come back with a little swagger. I'm with that.
She should.
All right, Germany, Canada. That's gonna be a banger, as mentioned, 1 p.m. Eastern. And the last matchup of the day. Was happy to see this team find their way into the quarters. Shout out to friend of the show, Julia Belas-Trindade. We did it. I didn't think we were going to do it. I picked against Brazil, sadly. But I was so happy to see them get through. Such a tough moment today in the match versus Spain for Marta.
Oh, my God.
She knew it. The announcer was devastated. He mentioned it roughly 75 times over the next 10 minutes after she was
broken up, yes.
He was going through something on air for sure. But I'm excited. They're in the tournament and they're playing. I don't know. Did they get the best drawing France? Maybe a little bit of a winnable game for Brazil.
I think they got to be pretty happy about it. I mean, obviously, the Marta situation is just crazy. I mean, people got to it pretty quickly. The first thing that came to my mind was the Zinedine Zidane red card in the 2006 World Cup final, where you just kind of look at Zidane and you're like, what are you thinking? And I thought the same thing with Marta, where it's just like, I can't believe she kicked her boot up that high. Like, you're asking for a red card at that point. She almost takes Olga's head clear off. You can see the reaction of every player, but you could also see in the slow motion reactions, like you can see every player have an inner conflict too, because they all look up to her so much. They're like, oh my God, and then they're just like, you got to get a red card, but you're still Marta. I'm sorry, but like you got to get one, Marta. And I think Leah Alexandri from Manchester City, who plays for Spain, like she basically did the like, sorry, Marta, but you got to go. I love you, but you got to get out of here because you were wilding right there.
Absolutely wilding right before halftime too, and she knew it. She knew it too.
Oh,
she got up. She was just like, what was I thinking?
It was crazy.
So she'll be out one match or two, because Mayra Ramirez out 2 matches, right? Or how does this work?
Yeah, this is the thing. This is the mystery of the Olympics, but I believe we have it solved. I think when you get a straight red, I believe in the Olympics, if Mayra Ramirez is any indication, I believe you are then out for the next 2 matches.
All right. So Marta will be back in the final or the third place match. We'll see.
Exactly.
If they get there. France on the other side. A little underwhelming. I was sort of hoping for a France-Germany first round matchup. Just because those are like, I don't know, the classic underachievers of the last couple of years. Great teams on paper, super loaded, just can't quite get it together. Would have been cool to see those 2 teams battle. Sure. But I think now that they're separated, France, they're on Spain's side of the bracket. So if they get past Brazil, could be facing Spain. But I don't think getting past Brazil is any done deal. I think defensively, they've looked a little choppy. Katoto, I mean, she's absolutely cooking. I think she's played above expectations. I think if I'm being honest with myself, I think she's definitely surprised. She looked great at PSG. She's looked even better in this tournament.
For sure.
But you've got to look a little harder to see other players on this France side that have been outperforming. What's been your read on France?
They just fall asleep for like long stretches. They're not playing like interesting or creative football for just minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time, 20 minutes at a time, an entire half. Yeah, I think underwhelming is a perfect word for it. I'm glad you used that. And I'll say, if France falls asleep for a substantial stretch in the match against Brazil, they'll lose. Like Brazil will take advantage of that. Marta or no Marta. You saw Gettolin. She got some substantial minutes in this match. It looks like she's ready to go. Now, I wonder, did she get substantial minutes in this match? And that means she's going to be a little more limited in the next match. That could be a problem. I think that could also stand to reason, actually, now that I talk it out. But I think Brazil's defense should feel pretty good about this matchup, despite the great attacking talent on the French side.
I agree with that.
Because exactly to your point, if you could maybe limit Katoto, nobody else has done a lot yet.
Limiting Katoto, easier said than done for sure. But I think Brazil defensively, they've been pretty impressive. I mean, you lose Marta. And then I think the last 20 or 25 minutes, Antonia was just really hobbling around. They had to move her up into the 9 spot just because they couldn't have her back there defensively. She was too much of a liability. And they obviously run out of subs. So I think there's something to that nightmare of a match being over. Obviously playing Spain, trying to get something, it just kind of not going your way. Get a little chance to regroup, maybe bring on some of the reserves. Kind of wish Jace was on this team. Yeah. I'm not sure if it's injury related, but I think her pop would be very beneficial, based on where things are at. But I totally agree with you. I think this Brazilian side, Gabi Nunes, Gettolin, Adriana, if they could maybe piece something together, have a nice 10-minute stretch and maybe build a little bit of a cushion that proves a little tough for France to come back from. Because I think if there's one team that you want to knock on their heels and they're at home and the weight of the world is on their shoulders and the pressure's on and the time is now, I think it's this French side that you want to come out, smack them early, and then see what kind of response you get from them.
I think you're absolutely right. And I want to go back to your point about Brazil's defense. So they conceded 2 goals against Japan. One was a penalty, and one was that wonder strike when Lorena was off her line in a bit of a scrum.
Yep.
They conceded 2 goals versus Spain. One was just the dam eventually breaking because they had been playing with 10 players for so long, and the other one was the super late wonder strike by Putellas. So other than that, I feel like they should feel pretty good about themselves. And I also want to point out, though, in terms of Brazil's attack, you mentioned Adriana and Gabby Nunes, possibly Caroline. When France falls asleep like that, 3 passes can unspool their defense. Yep. Do you trust Brazilian footballers to put together 3 passes sometimes over the course of a match?
Mm.
I would say you do.
Totally.
And I want to point out, show favorite, Sakina Karshawi, she looked a little hobbled toward the end of the match. So I had found this cool website. It's called Cœur de Foot, which means footballing heart, I believe. Footballing hearts, maybe. And they talked to her post-match. And here's what they wrote as her quote, and they had little editorial notes in there, which I found amusing. So this is a quote. They say, parenthetically, nervous smile from Karshawi. And then she says, it's okay, in reference to her hamstring. She says, I'm coming out of a really big effort, so I don't want to say anything. I hope it's okay. We'll see tomorrow. We hope it's not too serious. We should hope it's not too serious. So, and I want to say also, it's worth pointing out, the last reporting I saw, Wendy Renard was reportedly, according to the Associated Press, set to have an MRI on Tuesday. So I haven't seen what the update to that report was. Well, she didn't play today, so no Renard, maybe no Karshawi or a hobbled Karshawi, or maybe a hobbled Renard and a hobbled Karshawi. What are we talking about? Are we supposed to look at France as the favorite here?
I mean, probably still, but thin margin. I mean, like, well, let me put a different question to you.
Yeah.
We'll put Canada, Germany off to the side. We'll assume these teams are roughly in the same ballpark.
Sure.
Japan trying to beat USA, Colombia trying to beat Spain, Brazil trying to beat France. If you're picking one upset of those, you got to imagine that Brazil over France is, I mean, you could make a case Japan over USA, but I think I'd still go Brazil over France. There's something just off about this France. Like the New Zealand match today, the formality of all formalities. You're on 3 points, Colombia's on 3 points. You know Colombia's going to be at a dogfight. You get to kind of like take on New Zealand at home, close out the group stage, flying high, enter the quarterfinals, high-fiving and just, laughing and, just, showing pictures of things you've seen on the internet to your teammates just because everybody's just that loose.
Right.
Didn't get that.
Nope. No, not at all. And so I totally agree with you on the confidence scale of those 3, USA, Japan, France, Brazil, Spain, Colombia. For sure, the upset that I would be most confident in picking is Brazil over France. And that is no disrespect to the French players, but I think that's a big indictment on what's going on in the program because they just have too much talent for that. And so obviously we talked about it with Asile, Hervé Renard kind of being on his way out. I just keep going back to that. Something is off over there.
I mean, since diving way in last summer's World Cup, this is the thing that I think has made itself most apparent. And obviously we see this USWNT national team kind of up close. Your lionesses, Serena Wiegmann, she's rock solid there. I think Asile talked about her being gently approached, about the men's job and just kind of like really dismissing it in max fashion, which is very cool to see. And then we've seen stuff with Canada as well, where organizationally a disaster, but the players are such professionals that I think we're seeing them transcend everything going on. The flip side with France a little bit, great players and just not really able to kind of put it together. Now, looking at it from the French perspective, this Brazilian side, you mentioned some of the France injuries. We mentioned Antonia, kind of like banged up. Caroline still obviously not all the way back. Like in today's match, I was kind of happy when she did get subbed off in the 70s. I'm like, okay, good. All right. She's
right.
She's going off on her own, volition and like everything's good. We'll see her back in a couple of days here for sure. But I think if you're France, this is a really nice draw as well in terms of like a let's get things back on track kind of game. And if they're looking ahead to Spain, which they shouldn't be, but if they're thinking, okay, let's win this one and just survive another day, move, advance to the next round, Brazil is probably a good matchup for them. But I think both you and I are probably reading the tea leaves a little bit and just kind of seeing, okay, they couldn't quite get it right against New Zealand.
Yeah.
when everything was lined up perfectly, what makes you think in knockout stage the Brazil is going to be any easier?
Yeah, and so they're leaning on what you're talking about. So the Antonia injury, Caroline on the mend, no Marta, and then Brazil's goalkeeper Lorena looked like she was in pretty rough shape toward the end of that match too. So if you're French, you can lean on those things, but you were also able to lean on we're way better than New Zealand. Like
Right.
by every measurement you could, transfer fees, contracts, big clubs, historical success with our clubs, every measurement you could experience, every measurement you could possibly have, you are miles ahead of New Zealand. And it takes 2 from Katoto, and I think they're level going into halftime. Let me do a live fact check of myself here.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was right. You're level going into halftime against New Zealand on your home soil. You just got to be better than that.
When you really think about it, I love to play this kind of like reverse engineering game. If France were to beat Brazil on Saturday, let's say 3-0, 3-1, like a sound victory. What I would have expected against New Zealand is like a 5-0, 5-1.
Sure.
Kind of like, look what USA did to Germany.
Right.
And then look at what France did to New Zealand. It's like, like they made it way, way more interesting than it needed to be. And this could have been like, not just a showcase match where it's like, oh, we get to have like our YouTube compilation of all of our best moments. Sometimes it's like 30% the New Zealand game.
Right.
That didn't happen at all. And I think you would have expected a big performance today if you are of the opinion that this France side can go deep in this tournament. We didn't get that. Now, I think I'd be pretty shocked now, I'll say, if France were to come out and really lay the smackdown on Brazil on Saturday.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If it's a beatdown, I will be absolutely surprised. And as nervy as it was, maybe nervy is not the right term, but it's a 2-1 victory. And I know every football match is not going to end 3-0. But again, look at the talent disparity here. Look at where the match is being played in the environment. Like bringing on Eugénie Le Sommer in the 83rd minute, that should have been a part of what you're talking about, where everybody's laughing. She gets a gigantic ovation. She's smiling coming on the field, when really she's coming on there going, okay, don't do something dumb to accidentally give up the equalizer.
Yeah. No, and I think she's coming into a nervy game. Like she's coming into a game where things can go. I mean, this wasn't going to happen, but France could have gotten eliminated today if things broke terrible. So, I mean, they were technically at risk. I would have just wanted to see a bunch more from them. But let's put that to the side for now. Let's get wacky. Let's fill out this bracket. Let's figure out what we think happens from here. I think we both did pretty well with our tiers and pre-tournament predictions. I think we each talked each other out of stuff that was actually right. So, it'd be like that sometimes. But now is as good a time as any to kind of get things back on track here. Let's stay on this match that we were just talking about, and that's France hosting Brazil. This will be the first pick that we make, and then we'll work our way through until we land on a winner.
I like it. Are we talking to each other into a bad idea, picking against the home team? Because my gut reaction is I think Brazil's going to win this football game.
I think you're damn right you're talking to us into.
Let's go.
I think that's exactly what we're talking about.
Let's go.
Yeah, I don't know. There's definitely a little bit of a stink on this France team.
Yeah.
I would have liked to just see one really good performance. They started hot against Colombia, gave up 2, made that one nervy. At some point, usually this kind of catches up with you. We saw this team kind of flame out World Cup against Australia without scoring with, for the most part, the same squad.
Yeah.
I like it. Let's put Brazil through. Congratulations. Obrigado. Spain, Colombia. Not sure how long we need to talk about this one.
Spanish fans, you cannot get mad at us. Spain's going to win this match. I think for a long stretch of it, I think it's going to be a dogfight because those Colombian players, we've talked about their toughness, their intelligence, their speed, and their skill. They're just not quite at the level yet of Spain. Who is?
I agree with that. And I think all 4 of these matches, all 8 of these teams, all 7 of these matches, or actually 8, counting the third place match, I don't think there's any off the board upsets. I think we got 8 good teams. Even Colombia beating Spain, I wouldn't lose my mind over that. That would be surprising. But we also, like we mentioned, we haven't seen Spain, explode either. Just 5 goals in 3 matches. I can see this one being 1-0 late or 1-1 and then going 2-1. Absolutely on the board. But I think Spain does advance here.
I think I would be closer to losing my mind if Colombia advances over Spain. I don't want anybody to misunderstand. I'm confidently picking Spain. Spain's going to win. I just think for a stretch, I think Colombia can make it a fight. I would be very, very, very surprised if Colombia advanced over them.
I think that's a fair point. I'm going to add one more caveat to that. I think there are teams in the tournament that I don't think could beat Spain. Weirdly, I don't think France could beat Spain. I don't think Germany. Yeah. I don't think Germany could beat Spain either. Just those are bad matchups for them. And I think there's just something about Colombia. They could really muck the game up. We've seen Spain kind of like stall out. Not stall out, but it's like, they don't, it's weird to say, but they don't have Katoto up there. That is just sort of just going to be like a putback monster, just like, all right, like he's going to create, he's going to win her matchup handily.
Right.
I think we've seen Pariuelo be threatening in spots. Mariona has been kind of like sort of looking for her place on the pitch. Yeah. Collectively, they're awesome. But I think, again, these are very small sample sizes. You're talking about 90 minutes of football. But I think there are some teams I really would be shocked. Colombia, I don't think is that kind of team. You could get something from Caicedo early. You can get something from Ramirez early. And then I think you could see this game in contest late, unless Spain's been playing a little bit of possum. But I don't think that's the case either. I think they are who they are at this point. Really good team. Probably the favorite or one of the co-favorites. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting matchup.
I'm with you on that. That makes a lot of sense. On the list of teams that could do it, I think Colombia belongs on that list. That's fair.
Mm. All right, let's go. USA, Japan. This one's tasty. What are we looking at? What are we thinking?
All right. So in our YouTube comments, let's rewind all the way back to match day 1. I think when we watched the Spain-Japan match, we said there's a chance that these might be the two best teams in the tournament. I had a brief YouTube conversation with now friend of the show, Dolph Manity.
Love Dolph.
Manity, who asked me if I would be willing to bet my own hard-earned money that Japan could beat the USA, because he did not believe that Japan was likely one of the two best teams in the tournament. And I kind of jokingly wrote back, I think I would. So and this was obviously before we saw the Germany match and all these other things. And so I told him, I was like, I don't bet strangers on the internet, but I do live near a casino. And so if the value is right, which I have not yet seen the odds, that maybe I would take him up on that. And if Japan were to defeat the USA, then I would make some money. And if USA defeats Japan, then he could gloat and mock me on the internet, which is totally fair. I've set myself up for it by doing this show. So I want to start with that caveat. Shout out to Dolph. Thanks for rocking with us. Thanks for watching the show. And so I'm going to do it. I mean, I'm going to place a couple bucks on Japan to win because I think the value is going to be excellent. And I think a lot of the action, if you believe it or not, I'm sorry to talk a little gambling here. I think a lot of the action is obviously going to be on the USA, and it's going to kind of drive up that number so I can bet a little and make a decent chunk if Japan wins. But I don't want that to influence our show bracket. So let me just set that all the way to the side. Where are you landing on USA versus Japan?
It's interesting because I think before today's match against Australia, I think I would have had these teams a little bit closer. And I know Japan could perform against a tough Nigeria defense and just a tough squad, top to bottom. I think seeing the U.S. break down that Australian defense, and I know that they got completely roasted by Zambia, but they had one pathway to surviving, and that was finding the draw. Still didn't find the draw the entire tournament. Still just wins and losses. So
crazy.
Apologies if you're out there betting the draw. I think they really showed something today. I think Australia was going to do everything they could not to give up a goal, and for them to just kind of like keep chip away, get the goal before halftime. Not in like the freewheeling, sprinting kind of like fun Bell Biv de goal kind of way that we've been used to this tournament.
Right.
They really made him work for it. And then you get kind of like a Corbin Albert sort of wonder strike, which weirdly has been missing a little bit from this team. It's been a lot of like Smith to Swanson to Smith, Rodman involved, Rodman and Smith, like that's been the formula for pretty much every single one of these goals. Haran as well with a couple of assists so far. But there's just a few different ways that this team can score. I think defensively, they're really, really locking down. This is going to be an interesting battle. But I think based on the current form, I think USA has definitely got enough to get past Japan in what's going to be a really tough matchup.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Japan's attackers are really going to have a tough hill to climb if the back four is Dunn, Davidson, Gurma, Fox. I think that's really tough. And even if it ends up being Dunn, Sonnet, Gurma, Fox, I think that can be really, really difficult for Japan. So for the purposes of this show bracket, and I finally found the odds, Japan is plus 320 to win in regulation.
Mm-hmm.
So for any folks out there, if you bet $100, you would win $320. So that's pretty good value. So for the purposes of the show bracket, though, let's take the good old US of A.
I like it. Plus 290 for the draw. Throw in a little half, and you might be in business there.
There you go. I will say, I think I'm with you on that. I think if USA is going to win, I think it's either an extra time or PKs.
I could see that. I think USA is going to score.
Yeah.
It's going to come down to, is Japan going to score? Are they going to score enough? They could get 2 in the first half, and that could keep USA busy the entire match trying to get those 2 back and maybe get a third. So all of this depends on kind of like how the games break, but I think we're on the right side of the future here, taking USA.
Both teams to score is minus 174, so Vegas agrees with you that both teams may possibly score. Okay, I'm done. We're done with the gambling talk. It's over. That's a different podcast.
Different life, you might say.
Exactly.
All right, last matchup of the quarters, Canada, Germany. I've got very strong thoughts and feels on this one. I want to hear where you're at.
Man, Canada's feeling awfully Team of Destiny, Team of Destiny with a ceiling. I think we've talked about it a lot. I think the defense is tough. I think they make it challenging on their opponents. It feels like they block shots. I wonder if the stats would back that up. But it just feels like Canada, like you talk about, like kind of that hard-nosed mentality. It feels like they're able to kind of muck stuff up. So I think I'm leaning Canada in this one.
Yeah, I'm heavy Canada too.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this German side has a little bit of front running to it. You know, you rattled off like their 3 results. Take care of business against Australia, get thumped by the USA, take care of business again against Zambia. This Canada side, probably more like the USA than they are like Australia and Zambia. No disrespect to the Tillies. This is going to be a battle for Germany. I like to sort of call these matches like set the tone matches. Like, let's see first 5-10 minutes, which team is setting the tone. So I think if they can match Canada's intensity, then we've got ourselves something. But that's not what I expect. I expect Canada to kind of keep the intense times rolling and Germany not to be able to totally keep up with that.
Okay, I like it. I think we're in agreement. Canada moves on.
Awesome. Let's stay at the bottom of the bracket. This Canada side versus the good old USNA. What do you think?
I mean, we talked about it with Mariam Karabi. If she scores bangers, again, subscribe. It's a good rivalry. The matches are close. I know when we had kind of started doing this podcast and we had started talking about it, we looked at the all-time record and I was like, we sure this one's a rivalry? Because of the lopsided nature of the wins versus the losses. I would expect a good match. I mean, we saw it in the CONCACAF W Gold Cup. We saw it in She Believes. I think Canada is capable of playing USA tough. They do have that experience edge as a squad together in this kind of tournament in the Olympics. I just think the top 3, the 3 forwards, Bell, Biv, de Gaulle, if you will, I just think they're too good. I think that would end up being too much for Canada. So I would place my chip on USA. Where's your head at?
I think I'm with you on USA. I feel like I can see a scenario where the USA kind of treats this Canada matchup a little bit like their championship. Like, all right, this team wins the gold last time. It's been hotly contested these last couple of times. Like, let's go beat this team. Like maybe a kitchen sink type situation for the USA to kind of get past them. And then maybe potentially Canada just kind of running out of fuel. But I think maybe outside USA, Japan, that was an interesting matchup. I think USA, Canada is as even as it could get, barring maybe this final preview that we're going to get into here in a few minutes. But I think these 2 teams, it's sort of coin flip 50-50 type territory for me.
I think that's fair. And, you sparked something in me here that how many times do you see in like March Madness or in any kind of like playoff scenario in American sports? Hell yeah. I mean, you see it in football too, where the Cinderella team or the team that had like a lot of things going against them, they do hit that point where it's like, they're just gassed from every big win. So like they have this huge emotional uplift from the France victory. And then they do it again against Colombia,
Mhm.
and let's say they do it again against Germany, how many times can the serotonin go up and down and up and down until
Yep.
eventually you are just cooked? I like where your head's at on that.
All right, so sort of begrudgingly, we're putting the USA into the final. Brazil, Spain.
Yeah, I mean, if Brazil makes it here, it would be a massive achievement for them. Now, obviously, the Marta red card and all that stuff. We've seen how Spain played against Brazil. Now you're going to go in there and you're going to have a lot of these Spanish players, and they're going to have more information. They're going to have a little more muscle memory against Brazil,
Mm,
and the reciprocal is true. Brazil will have that same information about Spain. The tricky thing is Spain has many of the best players. So, I think this would be a massive result and hopefully something that they could really take into the 2027 World Cup for Brazil. It would be really difficult to find a path for them to beat Spain.
yeah, I agree with that. And we talked about like Colombia maybe giving Spain a little bit of a hard time. I don't think Brazil is in that category that could give Spain a hard time. I think anything that Brazil does really well, Spain kind of will have already seen a version of that somewhere at some point. So that leaves us with a bronze medal match of Brazil versus Canada. What are you thinking there?
Well, that would be March's return.
Ooh.
And so that would be a huge emotional lift. And I think that makes things very, very interesting. If Canada were able to walk away with a bronze medal, you would have people shouting, don't even hand the bronze medal to them because you're just going to revoke it anyway. There's some humor in that, obviously. Some people take it very seriously. That's understandable as well. How rad would it be if Marta had this moment where it's a complete disaster and she gets the red card? And a lot of people are saying that's the end of her international career. I know they meant like in the context of tournaments, but let's all keep in mind that Marta is going to get a victory tour, a celebration tour, a retirement tour for her career, no matter what. But I'd also say maybe tune in to some Orlando Pride games because I'm not sure it's off the board that Marta can't give you 15 minutes a game every couple games in the 2027 World Cup.
Ooh.
So I know. I'm saying she'll be 40 years old at that point, 41 years old. I don't know. Everybody get in line. Who wants to bet against Marta? I'll let you guys line up, form a nice orderly queue for the people who'd like to bet against her. So I think I'm really curious to hear what you're going to say. I think it would be cool for either of these sides to win. I'm going to go overly sentimental. Let's say Marta makes her comeback. Brazil walks away with the bronze.
Massive. It's such a good story. I don't think I can pick against it. If I'm going to make the case for Brazil to get past Canada for the bronze, you could envision a world where the loss to the US in the semis is just too devastating. They're like, okay,
Right.
we gave it everything. We literally left all of it on the field. And, you could see them not necessarily being able to summon everything for this bronze medal match.
Yeah.
And then you could also see maybe Brazil. I keep thinking about the conversation we had with Julia. And this is a team that has had success in the World Cup, in the Olympics prior, maybe a generation or a generation and a half ago. But it's there. It's in the DNA. Would be a really great outcome. I think I'm into it. I mean, I think if Brazil gets past France, another, foray against Spain, they might be like, okay, well, we are up here. Like, we belong. I think Canada would be a big-ish favorite in that match, though. They've proved a ton to me. If I'm putting my hard-earned TBP dollars on a pick, I think I'm probably taking Canada. But I think for show purposes, let's wacky up this bracket a little bit.
There you go.
Let's give Brazil a little bit of hardware for the hard work they put in.
Yeah, I like it. And yeah, you reference like the past success that the program has had. Runners up in the 2007 World Cup and then silver medals in both the 2004 and 2008 Olympic Games. So it would be a great way to kind of send Marta into her victory tour if she doesn't end up playing in the 2027 World Cup. Also, what if it's on the board too that they just get mashed by Spain and then Arthur Elias is just like, okay, Gettling, you're off. Antonio, you're off. And just starts resting everybody. And then Canada's in a dogfight with USA. And then to your point about them just being emotionally cooked and drained. And now you have rested Brazilian players going up against Canada. So I do think you're right, though. I think if these teams meet and it's like Marta coming back, I do think Canada would likely be the betting favorite. But what's the fun in that?
None at all. I think them getting mushed by Spain is super live. Yeah, and
Oh yeah.
you reminded me of
Oh
that
yeah.
when you were like, "Oh, Spain's going to have tape on you," like, and they're going to be able to do a little bit more with that tape, I think, than
Yeah.
Brazil will. They're going to be find a little bit more to exploit with those talented players. So I can see that one, the Brazil-Spain rematch, being a little bit of a wider margin than the first go around. So, all right, we got Brazil up on the podium with their bronze medals. Now, just one more matter of business at hand: Spain, USA in the final. I've got to kick it to you. My brain is still a little bit too jumbled to kind of figure out to collect my thoughts. I need to hear where you're at with this one first.
All right. Well, proceed with caution. You're going to the man with a foggy brain over here with the illness. But I will say, I'm born in America, lived here my whole life. I got my issues with this place. I think I've made that well established. But with that said, the members of the U.S. women's national team, at least for the time that I have been paying attention, a decent chunk of my life, have been people who I have found easy to root for. Yeah, even being an England supporter, I kind of wear the two hats. But we said it before this tournament, and I'm just not going to mince any words about it. I don't think this team, even with this great performance in this tournament, it's nearly impossible to beat Spain. They're too good, man. And I just think in like the NBA wisdom that you and I kind of grew up on and were raised on, and you see it in football too, you got to kind of go through some stuff before you're able to win at the biggest level, at the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think this team with their current chemistry, they're on a great trajectory, speaking of the United States. But I remain unmoved in my opinion that I think there might be 2 goals between Spain and USA right now. They're too organized. They're too smart. And maybe I've been moved a little bit. I don't want to say I remain unmoved, completely unmoved. I think maybe the gap is a little smaller than I expected, but I think it's still a pretty sizable gap. So if it's 2-0 and then USA pulls one back in like the 86th, I can see that. Or if it's 2-1 in the 88th and Putellas hits another laser into the top of the net and it ends 3-1. I think you could look at that and be like, okay, that's fair. That was a 1-goal game and then they stretched it and now everybody goes and grabs their gold medal. So I don't mean to be a fatalist here, but I don't think it is. I think it's just the reality of the situation. Spain is the best team in the world. I think they walk away with the gold.
Totally disagree.
Yes.
I'm going to take the USA to beat Spain.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why. Let me see if I can talk you into this.
All right.
So I was very curious coming into this tournament to see what kind of approach tactically Emma Hayes would employ. I think what we've seen this tournament has been very illuminating. A lot of possession, a lot of like forward play, quick forward play, but not with like balls over the top that we're just going to run onto. I think now we have the players to actually work the ball up the field. Lavelle's been great at it. Smith, Swanson, they've been great at it. I think that is a little bit of the recipe that Emma Hayes, I believe, thinks could beat Spain.
Yeah.
Almost like, let's forfeit the midfield. We don't have the horses there. But where do we have the horses? Back 4, our left back and right back, causing havoc up the left and right hand sides, and our players up front, like giving them the freedom from pretty much anywhere on the field to turn any bit of possession into a fast break or a breakaway or whatever. And I think that strategy has been employed because Emma Hayes is looking at and thinking about Spain and thinking about how we might beat this team. Now, on the flip side, I've mentioned Spain's attack looking pretty underwhelming. So I don't see Bariuelo scoring against our back line or Jenny Hermosa scoring or a Caldente scoring. I think it's probably going to be from the midfield, like Patri, Aitana, or Alexia. Alexia's been on absolute fire. So I would take a look at the anytime goal scorer for Alexia, in that, and pretty much any matchup, I think, until she starts to cool off.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's going to take some magic from Spain. I think each of these teams is good for 1 goal.
Sure.
You can say it's either going to be Alexia or Aitana or Patri. And on the U.S. side, it's going to be one of Soph, Win, and Fire, just depending on who. We'll keep an eye on that. And then I think it just becomes who gets the 3rd goal, who's got the better approach, who's got the better game plan. And the last thing I'll say, we've been on the Spain side, watching Barcelona really closely. But a lot of their brand, in my mind, comes from their performance at the World Cup and their out-and-out domination of France in the Nations League. Now, that France side not quite looking like the world the world beater that I think we think they could be in our mind. I think like on the field we really kind of haven't seen it in a good while. So what if France is just like a second tier team, just out and out? So yeah, of course Spain's going to beat them 2-0. Yes, it's a final. It's a big deal. France, how much do they care about the Nations League? Who knows? They had already clinched the Olympics as the home country. So I'm not saying it, but I just have a feeling that this U.S. side is going to have something left for that final versus Spain, maybe that we haven't fully seen. And I think there's going to be some vulnerabilities against that Spain side that some of our strengths might be able to take advantage of. And I think most of that, I got to chalk it up to Emma Hayes.
Oof, that's bold. There should have been swelling dramatic music behind you. Very American style, Independence Day style.
Welcome to Earth.
Man. Yeah, exactly. I love where your head's at. And let me just say, because you've reminded me of something. When Marta got that red card, there was a tweet sent out from the ITC Twitter account that said something to the effect of, let's hope Brazil can pull out some magic here, or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would just like, if you wouldn't mind, a little running theme of this episode, if you could confirm to all the Spanish fans who watch this program, who sent that tweet between us who have that, both have access to that Twitter account?
That would have been me.
Okay, good. So Spanish fans who've been riding me for like picking Mary Earps over Catacoy for my World 11, who got on me for picking Leon over Barcelona, who's told me I have been disrespecting Spain. Let the record show that Dino's picking USA here to beat Spain, and that he sent out a tweet that I know you're going to latch on to and be like, why are you rooting for Brazil over Spain? Why are you guys haters? So I just want to just clear that up. I'll say, I mean, if you want the show bracket to be USA over Spain, I will absolutely ride with that. I think that'll be a good looking graphic. But I honestly, because we're at a stalemate here, because I don't think USA is beating Spain. With Alexia playing this way, I just don't know what answers we're going to have in the midfield for Alexia, Bonmati, and Patri. I think that's a nightmare. Betuelo has not scored in this tournament, and your point stands there. I take your point on that. I think that's good. Now we get to get into one of my favorite tropes, but is she due? I don't know how due she is, and does the explosion happen? So I don't think USA is going to be able to do it. I think they're going in the right direction, but they're definitely on the list of teams that could beat them. I wouldn't be totally floored, but I would be surprised. So I say, you, producer of the show, I say you make the call on what the bracket looks like, and I will respect it.
Well, I do want to address those Spain fans. It's a wacky bracket.
There you go. You never know what's going to happen. It's a tournament.
All right. 2-1 USA. Gold medal. Let's fucking go.
I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
I love it.
What a tournament. Can't wait. Now I want to actually see them play football. Keep it locked with your boys. We're going to be covering every bit of this. I know we're way into the deep waters here, so appreciate everybody for continuing to rock with us. I had one more quick question before we get out of here. Group stage MVP.
Ooh.
Do you have one? Do you have a short list? This is probably just a little slick way to do. Let's name some dudes.
Of course.
Who's really stuck out to you in this group stage?
Marie Antoinette Katoto, 5 goals in the group stage. She's the only reason France gets through the way they do. Barbara Benda, 4 goals. So those are your 2 top goal scorers. Obviously, got to name them.
Love it.
Jessie Fleming, 1 goal and 1 assist, but just a monster for Canada.
Big time.
They cannot have the success they have if she doesn't play well. And I believe she played 270 of the 270 available minutes in those 3 matches.
Tremendous. Yeah. Shout out to Jessie Fleming for sure. Alexia, got to be in the conversation.
Has to be.
Big game player. Vanessa Gilles, she made my short list. A couple of Americans as well. Sophie Smith and Naomi Girma, I think, have been exceptional.
Yes.
I think without either of those players, totally different group stage for USA. Both of those players have absolutely stood out. Also had Katoto, also had Fleming on my short list. So do you have an MVP pick?
I'm going to take Marie Antoinette Katoto because I think France might be out if she doesn't play the way she played.
God. Great point. Love the pick. Hard to argue with. She's also stepped up, we've talked about.
Hell yeah.
Above and beyond where she was for her club. I think my pick, a little sentimental. I'm going to take Alexia Putellas for MVP. Best team.
It's great.
Probably best performance on the best team. Would have loved to be in the room with our guy Chris Sharples when either of those Alexia goals came in, just to hear, the Sharples treatment on that.
Hell yeah.
I certainly imagined it. It was definitely glorious. So shout out to our guy Chris. But yeah, I think Alexia is my group stage MVP.
Love it. Yeah, worthy pick. Absolutely. An in-form, complete dangerous weapon for the best team.
All right, man. Anything else you want to hit before we get out of here?
I want to do a couple end-of-show shout-outs if I can. So, this is long overdue. Threads user Callie Texican on Threads, friend of the Shadow EP, who also manages our Threads account. Callie Texican, you are one of the elite knowers of ball among our audience. Thank you for rocking with us, and thank you for sharing our videos and just always being super cool and knowledgeable. So this is way overdue. Just wanted to give you the quick shout. Couple people who wanted to participate in the nickname game for the three forwards. We had Ronald Tobias 3925 on YouTube. He threw out RSS Express as the three forwards. So I like a good rhyme, and I'm not sure if it's Rodman, Smith, and Swanson or Rodman, Swanson, and Smith. Ronald, you might need to clarify that for us. We also got one from Gretchen Little, 6817 on YouTube. She said she was leaning into the, quote, corporate creative mode, which I thought was funny. And then she gave the three amigas, which, I think is like, it's well known, like evokes some emotion for people. And I think it fits pretty well because they all seem to be pretty good pals. And then I want to shout out Hepelo on YouTube. He gave us Pro Evo Soccer 3, which is a great reference to an old PlayStation 2 video game. It was an alternative to FIFA, and it got me to Google. I said, okay, who was on the cover of Pro Evolution Soccer 3? On the cover of that game is Pierluigi Collina. He was a referee. I think he is the only referee I've ever seen on the cover of a football game. He was an Italian referee in Serie A. He officiated the final of the 2002 World Cup. Great facial expressions on that guy. Google image search him. He has a bunch of videos calling him the most feared referee in the history of football. But he also was pretty well known, and I only vaguely remember this because the 2002 World Cup was a formative thing for me, but a massively respected referee. So Hepelo, who also I think got a shout out from the women's game and Sam Mewis and gave them an idea. And on their Twitter account, they were like, Hepelo, reveal yourself. Because I think he said something to them on YouTube, and then they're tweeting about it. So Hepelo, I appreciate you rocking with us, just as you do the women's game with Sam Mewis. So just wanted to get those shout outs out here. Make sure we thank the people who are so kindly watching the program.
Hell yeah. Definite shout out Hepelo, Callie Texican, Gretchen Little, Ronald, and pretty much everybody in the comment section. Comments were scorching on the last episode. The conversation, the commentary, all excellent, all really exciting. Luckily, there's no deadline on the Smith, Swanson, Rodman nickname. So if you got something, shoot it our way at ITC_pod or in the comments on YouTube. We'd love to hear it. Not to pat myself on the back. I still think Bell Biv DeGaulle, it's got to still be leader in the clubhouse. I got to imagine that's still the bar we're going to try to get over here.
I think so. I think it's got to be the leader in the clubhouse. And if I really think about how Trinity Rodman, Sophie Smith, and Mallory Swanson play football, if I had to give a musical comparison to it, I think I would describe their play as hip hop smoothed out on the R&B tip with a pop feel appeal to it.
I feel like I've heard that somewhere. I can't quite put my finger on it. And I got to say, it's driving me out of my mind.
Yes. The oldest men in the world.
Let's fucking go. Oh, man, I think we did it. This has been another episode of Into the Channel. Sincere thank you for watching, listening, following, liking, subscribing, just plain hanging out with your boys, keeping our comments section on absolute fire. Remember to like if you liked and subscribe or follow Into the Channel, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to watch or listen. Leave us a review over your favorite podcast app. Links to all of our socials in the show notes of this episode. And a big thank you to my co-host as well, Mr. Grant Angle, for cruising into the quarterfinals with me. No drawing of lots necessary, no tiebreakers necessary. Straight one seed, right to the top. I appreciate you, man.
Of course, buddy. Likewise, 3 wins, 9 points. Not 3 wins, 3 points. No drone gate over here. All respect to you, Miriam, in Canada. But yeah, again, thank you everybody for rocking with us, and we'll see you next time.